Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Matt. Welcome to the Sin Bin. So, the big news that I just received, I was actually sleeping. I received a text from my dad. He says, Mike Babcock just got the can. I couldn't believe it. I look all over Twitter. I look all over everything. And turns out, indeed, Mike Twitter did get fired. Here's an image of it. So the Leafs, they've confirmed it. And if you look here on the bottom, Hockey Night in Canada, they see that the Toronto Maple Leafs has fired head coach Mike Babcock. Sheldon Keefe has been named the club's new coach. More information to come later. Chris Johnson also says that Mike Babcock got fired. So my goal today was to talk a little bit about this whole situation. Do I agree with it? Do I disagree with it? Do I think it'll make a difference? And you guys, you can voice your opinions in the chat. Say if you like it, if you don't like it. I'll definitely read it. I'll try my best to answer it. Otherwise, you can join us at the Sin Bin. You can message us or Gmail, the Sin Bin 1996. Or on Twitter, you can add me at the SinBin1996. Or if you guys want to call in and we can have a little chat here, you can call me on Skype, user the Sinbin. I think it works, but either way. So Mike Babcock just got fired. So before I really delve into my opinion, let me first start by saying, let's talk about the origins of Mike Babcock in Toronto. So we all know he was with Detroit. When he was with Detroit, he was viewed as the best coach in the NHL, bar none. Granted, that was a few years ago. You know, things have changed since then. But when Mike Babcock was with Detroit, he was viewed as the best coach. When it came time for Team Canada to play at whatever international tournament it was, Mike Babcock, he was the guy. So, Mike Babcock, he was the guy. Toronto decided, hey, we're rebuilding. We're going to get some of the best players in the world. We're going to draft them. We want the best coach in the world. So, they ended up getting Mike Babcock. I thought it was a good move at the time, but I will admit, Mike Babcock had great results in Detroit. I always thought it was a product of the players. I know that might be controversial. I don't want to take anything away from the worth of the guy, but I did always think that Mike Babcock, always getting the results in Detroit, it was a product of having the guys like Zetterberg, the guys like Pavel Datsyuk. That's what I always thought anyway. Arguably, the only year that Mike Babcock didn't have good players on Detroit, they ended up being a first-round exit against the Boston Bruins, and that ended up being the year he left. So I always knew, if Mike Babcock is a good coach, this is going to be the time to prove it. Playing with a team like Toronto, who's a fairly new team, they're going to get some new stars. It's a fairly young team. This is going to prove to me if Mike Babcock is a good coach. Let me just sip on my Red Bull here. Oops, this one's empty. So, Mike Babcock comes to Toronto. The first few years are hard, but Brendan Shanahan warned us. He said, it's not going to be easy at the beginning, okay? We're not going to be winning too many games because we're a rebuilding team. And to his credit, he was right. Now, at the point we're at, the Toronto Maple Leafs have a lot of talent. They're overpaid, granted, but they do have a lot of talent. If you look at the guys like Tavares, like Marner, Morgan Riley, Austin Matthews, they have the firepower. Okay? They very obviously have the firepower. Ace Cooper Beast says Mike Babcock sucks. So they have the firepower. Now, a good coach's job is that they have to take all of that firepower and they kind of have to mesh it together like this and have them play as a full team. And I always thought when Ovechkin said those comments about the Maple Leafs, they need to play as a team, that's one thing that I always agreed with him. And if you really look at Mike Babcock's comments, he agreed with him as well. He said, it's going to hurt me to say, but we do have to play as a team. Okay, we do have to play as a team. And he's at the helm of the ship, Babcock. So a lot of the blame goes on him. I'm gonna run through a few comments. So Joe Giroux, he said, did you see the interview where Mike Commodore destroys him? He's an absolute asshole. Did I see it? I'm the one that posted it. People complain because I was putting too much fart noises. Hey, Nothing is as funny on this earth as a fart, so leave me alone. Joe says, man, as soon as I open my phone, I see that you're live, right on time. Thankfully, I don't have anything going on right now. Yeah, absolutely, and I gotta thank my dad because he was the one that texted me. I look at my phone and I see that Twitter's blown up, Mike Babcock is fired, etc. Alice Cooper says, thanks. Mike Babcock is a cock. Yeah, but his name is Babcock, so we all know he has the cleanest cock in the league. Joe says, I'm sure somewhere Mike Commodore is probably cracking up. And that brings me to another thing. Mike Babcock, if you look at his face, you see he has a lot of wrinkles. He's not a young dude. He's definitely an old dude. One of the common criticisms I hear about Mike Babcock is that he has an old teaching style. Okay, he's kind of stubborn in his own ways. He kind of has this old school mentality, and the league's moved on from that. The league is no more like that. That's one thing I could always see that rang true with me. I did think that Mike Babcock kind of had this old school mentality that I never thought really suited this league. Okay, I'll give you guys an example. So last year's playoffs, they play the Boston Bruins, who they've played time after time after time again. And it's in the final minutes of the game. Who do you want out there? You obviously want your best players, be it Austin Matthews, be it Mitch Marner. Who does Mike Babcock put out there? Patrick Marleau. He puts out Patrick Marleau. Now, back in the days, veterans, you had to rely on them. They were oftentimes your best players. Players didn't reach their prime till maybe early 30s. No joke, that's how it was back in the days. Today, that's unheard of. Players can come in the league and they can, right off make an impact, such as the case with Austin Matthews. So it always kind of disappointed me that in games like that, he never really relied on his stars. And last year, Matthews had a decent playoffs. He would go for the older guys. It's very old school, and I don't think I necessarily agree with it. Joe says, I'm sure somewhere Mike Babcock probably cracking up. Ace Cooper B says, say your dick is small. Well, I don't have to say it. It's the truth. My dick is small. I'm not proud of it, but still. 50% of it is foreskin. Dom Smith says, that guy can suck my horn, brother. Joe says, so who do they turn to now? That Keefe dude. I heard he was a rookie coach, though. That's a good point, and let's segue onto that. This Keefe dude. I don't know much about him because I wanted to put this video up as soon as possible, but from what I hear, you remember what they were saying about Dubas? How he was this fresh, young guy, and he knew all of the tricks, and he's the best GM that's not currently a GM in hockey? Well, I'm hearing the same thing with this Keefe guy, but he's not a GM, he's a coach. They're saying he's the best coach. He knows all of the ropes, everything, this and that. He is very inexperienced. He is very young as a coach. So I don't know how much it's going to help. For those Leafs fans out there, it might be possible. There might be a scenario where Mike Babcock gets fired and they turn the ship around and they end up making it to the playoffs. They may end up making the cup. That's a scenario. It's not impossible. I've seen it before. That first Pittsburgh Penguins team to win with Crosby, they had Michel Therrien as a coach. And much like Babcock, he got fired at some point during the season. They ended up replacing it with Dan Blasma. And I think they went to the finals. They may have ended up winning the cup. Let's see in the comments. Giveaway and God Gaming Ninja says, dude, Babcock is like, don't trash talk him. Babcock is lit. Don't trash talk him. Hey, if you think Babcock is lit, please tell me why in the comments, because like I said, I always thought that Mike Babcock looked good because of the teams he played on. Hey, he coached Team Canada. You know what I would do if I coached Team Canada? I would say, guys, do what you want out there. We're going to win gold anyway. What I'll decide is the restaurant we're eating at after. You guys just go out there and make some magic, and they probably will still win gold. So Mike Babcock on Team Canada, we know he didn't do anything. As for the Detroit Red Wings, Zetterberg, Hall of Famer. Lidstrom, Hall of Famer. Pavel Datsyuk, Hall of Famer. He did have his role in that one Stanley Cup he won in 2008, but I always saw that as a product of how good the GM was to draft those players such late rounds. Zetterberg, 5th round pick? Pavel Datsyuk, what was he, a 5th round pick? Dark Magician says, Dubas sucks. Can't win with 3 guys taking half your cap. Let's get to that later. I'm going to put it on pause. We'll get to that later. Ace Cooper says, you are one funny kid, bro. You earned yourself a sub. Thank you, brother. Dom Smith says, have any smoke shows for me that will tug on my meat? Are you referring to me? No, I don't have any smoke shows. I live alone here with my brother. Unless you find my brother's hairy ass something worth to tug your meat to, but I don't think so. Joe says, oh my God, Dion Phaneuf. Yes, they should go and get Dion Phaneuf and get him behind the bench. Yeah, that would be pretty funny. One thing, though, you don't have to necessarily be a superstar to be a good coach. Just look at Craig Berube. I believe he was a goon. So, who knows? Dion Phaneuf, he might come behind the bench and he might be lights out. That would be something. So, I did want to get to Kyle Dumbass because Dark Magician says that Kyle Dumbass sucks. You can't win with 3 guys taking half your cap. And that is absolutely true. If you guys don't know a channel out there called, what's it called? Puck Bag. It's with my buddy Jack. He made a really good video. The video was called, Don't Blame Mike Babcock for This. Blame Kyle Dumbass. It was called something like that, but you can look it up. And what he says in that video is that Mike Babcock, he's only trying to do the best with the players he has. And obviously, the players he have, it's because of Kyle Dubas. He's the one that put the team together. I'm not a fan of this GM whatsoever, guys. I am not a fan of that GM, and I was very vocal when they hired him as a GM, sorry. He was very young, first of all. He had no experience. And you could say he's the best. He knows all of the analytics. He has the best hipster glasses, anything you want. But when push comes to shove, you look at it, he has no experience. Experience is instrumental. Let me give you guys an example. Marc Bergevin. Right now, Marc Bergevin, people are starting to come around on him. And they're starting to see, hey, this guy's a good GM. People hated him for the Subban trade. Right now, they're like, you know what? Good trade. People hated him for the Domi trade. Right now, you know what they're saying? A good trade. People hated him for the Drouin trade. I think that one's still up in the air. People hate him for the Pacioretty trade. Hey, look, we won the trade. My point is, Marc Bergevin is a great GM in this league. Was he completely novel when Montreal hired him? Was he completely new? No. He had a stint in with the Blackhawks. Him and Kevin Cheveldayoff were assistant GMs for Scotty Bowman in the Chicago Blackhawks. He kind of knew the ropes, okay? He kind of knew the ropes. So he wasn't completely new when the Canadiens hired him. If you look at Kyle Dumbass, he was completely new, and he was completely young. And I do think that GM, maybe you can get away with it if you're a coach. Okay? For example, the guy they hired in Chicago, very young coach. Maybe you can get away with that as a coach. But if you're a GM, I think you need experience. It's almost something that you should have. If I were a president and I'm asking for the CV of my GMs, if I see they don't have any prior experience as at least an assistant GM, I'm not even considering them. Because one thing that comes with experience is the wherewithal to negotiate during contracts. His negotiation has not been very good this year. Okay? It has not been very good. I'm going to give him some slack here. Being in Toronto, it's kind of difficult for him to negotiate because of the whole tax situation, because of how the Canadian dollar isn't really worth that much. It's hard to negotiate. But at this point, and especially with William Nylander, it seems like they almost come to the meeting and Kyle Dubas says, hey, look, you want a number? Just write on this paper and I'll give it to you. And what do you get as a byproduct is that? Nylander, $7 million. Mitch Marner, $10.5 million. Matthews, $11.5 million. Tavares, $10 million. You'll never win with 4 players making that much money. You can never win. Okay? In the Puckbags video, he compared them to the Boston Bruins. Right now, the Boston Bruins' highest paid player, you know who it is? David Krejci. David Krejci, he makes $7 million, I believe. Brad Marchand makes less. Patrice Bergeron makes less. David Pasterjohn makes less. David Krejci makes the most at $7 million. If you want a model to win, just look at the Boston Bruins. Just look at the Boston Bruins. You know what? Crosby said it best on Spitting Chicklets. He said, hey guys, if we want to win as a team, if we want to win the cup, we all have to take a cut here and there. We have to take a cut. Crosby makes $8.7 million. I know it was probably worth much more at the cap hit back in the days, but end of the line, he took a cut. Malkin took a cut. Christopher Letang took a cut, and they ended up winning 3 cups. You have to take cuts, and where the GM comes into that, he has to make that clear with the players. He has to go with Matthews. He's like, listen, I'm going to try to reduce your contract. Not because I think you're bad. Not because you don't earn your money. Just because I want you to win. I want you to win. And we are not going to win if you and Johnny and Mitchie both make all 3 make $10.5 million. It's just not a good model. And that's one thing I thought Kyle Dubas was always not so good at. So you got 4 players making that much money. You don't have enough cap space to go and get a good defenseman. Look at their defenseman. It's porous. It's porous. I mean, there's no reason not to shit on the guy. And I'll get to your comments later, guys. There's no reason that a quote-unquote cup contender, a quote-unquote top 10 team in the leagues, should have Cody Ceci playing with Morgan Rielly on their first unit. If you have Morgan Rielly playing with Cody Ceci on the first unit, that's not some good GMing. And if you look at that, then you can look at Mike Babcock and say, hey, you know what? Maybe it isn't your fault. Maybe it's the GM's fault. Negotiating is really key here, guys. You go to Nylander, you say, $7 million. I know you want that much money. I can't because I want my team to win. What? You don't agree with me? Okay, bye-bye. I'll pick up the RFAs. Probably the 4 RFAs he would have picked up. Let's go through one of the comments. I'm going to scroll back here a little bit. Joey Giroux says, they made the biggest mistake in caving in on Nylander. Yeah, absolutely. Like I just said. Hey, great minds think alike because I didn't see it before I went on my rant. Everyone knows if they just hold out, they can get whatever they want. They're going to need to trade Nylander at some point down the road. 3-star NHL Murr says, NHL cried diversity and inclusion when Grapes said wear a poppy. Yeah, and 3 stars, I'm not going to talk about it in this video because I really want to focus on Mike Babcock. But if you go on my channel, I have multiple videos on Don Cherry, including an ultimate compilation of him. Joe says, I think their biggest mistake was signing JT. Out of all of the teams they were in talks with, Toronto needed him the least. Why sign JT when you need to sign Matthews, Marner, Nylander? So dumb. Very good point. Very good point. Very, very, very good point. And I'll tell you why. They couldn't resist. You see, a good GM, they look 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the line. And they'll look and they'll say, well, doing this action, this signing, will it jeopardize my team? Signing John Tavares, as good as John Tavares is, you're taking away from some of that money to sign other players. And then you go into cap hell. So I think the problem with Kyle Dubas, he saw John Tavares on the market. And all he can think of is, Toronto boy, Toronto pajamas. Oh man, I need him. Look at his Toronto sheets. And they couldn't resist and they signed him. An intelligent GM would have said, okay, I know he's from Toronto. I know he has Toronto sheets. I know he loves the team. He wants to play for the team. I have to look at my team's best interests. Will signing him to $10.5 million, will taking $10.5 million away from my cap spot, will it benefit my team? Probably not. I hate to say it. I mean, that's the type of moves, it really works in the short term. And they haven't won in the short term yet with John Tavares, so they're getting pretty tight there, guys. They're getting pretty tight. Joey Giroux says, I don't think the Leafs are blaming Babcock. Getting a new coach is the fastest way to get a spark out of your team. Besides, Babcock has kind of been on the hot seat for 2 years now. I don't think I agree with you when they say he's been on the hot seat for 2 years. I think it's really this year he's been on the hot seat because last year, whether you like it or not, they have made it to the playoffs. They've been a top 3 team in the Atlantic. But I do agree with you when I say I don't think the Leafs are blaming Babcock. They just kind of need a spank in the shorts. And I said it. We might see a Pittsburgh Penguin 2008 or 9 situation where they had Michel Therrien and they needed a spank in the pants. And what did they do? They went and got Dan Blasma. They ended up going all the way to the Cup final. Maybe even winning the Cup that year. My memory is a little hazy. Don Smith says, I'm not gay. I'm not gay. I don't like cock. I've tried it. Trust me. It's just not for me. And that's okay, right? Yeah, that's absolutely right. If you were to say, I don't like cock because I think it's gross, I would say, hey, try it first. But it looks like you've already tried cock and you don't like it, so hey, good for you. Joey Giroux says, they could be better in the future as the cap rises. Also a very good point. Wow, Joe and Joey, you guys are on fire. One good point after the other. The cap hit could rise. But for that, how can I say this? For those contracts to be digestible, the cap is going to have to rise way, way, way down the future, in my opinion. Okay, for example, Crosby, I did say he took a pay cut, but back in the day when he signed it, be it 2008, 2007, when he signed that contract, it's humongous. It's humongous. And it's not till maybe the year 2015 that we looked back on it and we're like, oh, okay, it's not that bad. I mean, the cap hit would have to rise a lot for 3 players making $10 million to look okay. I mean, the Canadians have 1 player making $10 million and I'm always bitching and moaning about it. So imagine 3. It's just not a good model to win. And I said the Boston Bruins have a good model. Who did they play in the playoffs? The St. Louis Blues. Same model. Everyone pretty much makes the same number of dollars. Okay, they have a few stars here and there that make a little bit more. But it's pretty much all standardized. Let's see, where was I? Joe says Marner gets $10.8 million. JT gets $11.5. And Matthews gets $11.5. Marner doesn't even deserve $9. Their players just aren't team players. Only think of themselves. And you know what's the funny thing? Yeah, it's true. He doesn't deserve $9 because he's a winger. A winger, they don't have as much responsibility. So why would you pay them more? It's like if I'm the head of a kitchen and I have 2 sous chefs and one of them, he could peel potatoes, he can do the dishes, he can mop the floors, he can fry rice, he can boil water. And then the other sous chef, the only thing he can do is boil water, and he's not that good at it. Will I give them the same amount of dollars? No. I'm going to give the first sous chef more. Why? Because he has more responsibilities. Mitch Marner, as good as a player as he is, he's one of the most creative, dynamic wingers in the NHL. He doesn't have the defensive responsibilities that a center has. So, yeah, I don't think he deserves that much money. It's kind of laughable. But, to be completely fair, Mikko Rantanen, who has a similar contract, I don't think he deserves that much either. Joey Giroux says, no one's a team player nowadays. Oh, yeah, I know what I want to say. Oh my god, can I have some more Red Bull? I might be addicted. Paul?
Yeah.
You mind getting me a water, please?
Can I cook?
In a bit. Give me a few minutes. Okay. Oh yeah, what I was gonna say. In Toronto, you might need to take a pay cut because of the whole, whatever, the taxes and whatever. It might be necessary to take a pay cut. But one thing I always found funny is that it's such a big market. It's such a big market. You'll see Austin Matthews, he'll be on Apple commercials. Mitch Marner, he'll be on Apple commercials. They're going to be on billboards all over Toronto. So yeah, they might be making less in the long run, but in the long run, they're actually making more. With all of the advertisements and the marketing and everything, being Toronto might be a blessing in disguise. Okay? So this is one thing the GM has to communicate to them. Thank you. They're going to say, okay, yeah, you're going to have to take a pay cut, maybe make 9 or 8.5 instead of 10 million, but in Toronto, you get your fucking face with your damn mustache on billboards. You can't get that in Arizona. You end up making more money in Toronto. You see, this is the one thing the GM has to communicate. Joe says, I wouldn't say nobody's a team player. You look at guys like McAvoy, McKinnon, Crosby, etc. Those guys are team players, in my opinion. Free Don. Joe says, I really wonder what Galley and Domi are going to ask for then, when they get their new contracts. Sorry, that was gross. One thing I will say, a blessing in disguise for the Montreal Canadiens, Max Domi is not having that great a season. Not a horrible season, but he's definitely cooled down in the points department. That's a blessing because it's his contract year. Imagine had he had another 70-point year. Can you imagine how much money he'd be asking for? Imagine if last year was flipped-flopped with this year. He'd be asking, 7.58 million at least. But since this year he might only finish with 50-something points, we could get Max Domi on a huge bargain. I really hope he signs because he seems to like the city. He seems to like the fans. I mean, I would get my feelings hurt if he goes somewhere else. Radulov. 3-star Mur says, thumbs up, blue heart. Dom Smith says, we shouldn't be paying guys so much that don't work hard. Let's start paying guys like Spezza and Gauthier. The only ones I agree with is willy-nilly. 88 because he is so hot. And that's another thing, guys. One thing I never understood. Why did Mike Babcock have such a fetish for not playing Jason Spezza? I mean, the first game, they're playing against Ottawa, or first or second game. Jason Spezza, Toronto boy, playing against the team that drafted him. He gets benched. That's one thing I always looked at Babcock and I said, why? Just why would you do something like that? It seems like you're purposely trying to piss off the player. But you could make the argument, okay, he thought that other players were better instead of Spezza. He decided to go with a lineup that wins. But we saw in the last few games, okay, Spezza arguably has been one of their better players. And what happens? He gets benched next game. Guys, teams like the Vegas Golden Knights, they were so good because if a player sucked, we didn't care if they got traded for a first pick or a second pick or whatever, that player got benched. If you wanted to play on the Golden Knights, you had to earn your spot. And in players like Thomas Tatar's case, he didn't earn his spot. The coach said, listen, I don't care if my GM just acquired you and we gave up a lot for you, you're going to get benched. It wasn't the same with Mike Babcock. That's down the stretch here. What was it against Pittsburgh? Okay, they got shellacked by Pittsburgh. 6-1, I believe. I thought the only decent player was Jason Spezza. Why does he go and get benched the next game? I don't understand it. It kind of reminds me in Montreal when we had Daniel Carr. Daniel Carr would play a great game and then Michel Therrien would bench him. Ah, boy. Alice Lagoon Hockey School, great name, says Willie is not hot. Now, are you talking in the hockey sense or in the looks department? Because I don't think he's hot in either. I think he kind of looks like if Leonardo DiCaprio was dropped when he was a kid. I think the cornrows are a really bad choice to go with. Massimo Cinelli says, is this true news? Oh yeah, as true as the sky is blue. Mike Babcock just got fired. Dave Morton says Spezza is my fave player right now. You know who's jumping of joy right now? Jason Spezza. Jason Spezza right now, he's not mourning. He's having a pizza party, and he's inviting all of his friends, and he's saying, yes, guys, now let's go win the cup. I'm going to get some ice time. Joey Giroux says, there's a dynamic in the league right now where players can ask for whatever they want because they know someone's going to give it to them. That's true. That is true. Especially in Toronto, where you can go to the guy's office. And look, guys, I said it with Carey Price. I'm one of the only ones that said, okay, he's a great goalie. He earned his money. Why just come up in the office and say, write a number, give it to me? Because that's what it seemed like with Carey Price. We ended up giving him 10. You have to negotiate a little bit. I know it's going to hurt the player's pride. I know it's going to hurt their feelings, but you do have to negotiate a little bit. Try to bring that price down. Because in the long run, you're not helping that team. I mean, they lost Nazem Kadri, who is on one of the most team-friendly deals in the entire NHL. And not only was he a good team-friendly contract, he was also a good team player. Say what you want about the suspensions and everything, he was a glue guy. He was a guy that had a lot of character. And that's something you need in the NHL. Brute talent isn't good enough to get away with it. You have to have a lot of character. If you take away, say Marner, you take away $1 million or $2 million. Matthews, you take away $1 million or $2 million. Johnny Tavares, you take $1 million, $1.5 million, $1 million or $2 million. The money you would have spared up by saving that, you could get a really decent player. Maybe a defenseman that's not Morgan Riley. Maybe a backup goalie that can stop a beach volleyball. And that, speaking about it, guys, that Kadri deal, that looks worse and worse by the minute. So for those people who, right now, kind of the theme out there is it Babcock the problem or is it Dubas the problem? I'd say, why can't it be both? I believe it's both. But for those people who are on Team Dubas, who they think Dubas is the problem, that Nazem Kadri trade looks worse by the minute. I said how much I think of Kadri. I think he's a great player. I would take him on my team any day. Hey, he's a Canadiens fan anyway, and he defended Don Cherry, which gives me brownie points. But they traded him away for Tyson Barrie. Okay, at first glance, great trade. You get Tyson Barrie, who was, or thought to be, a stud defenseman. You get Alex Kerfoot, who's a similar-ish player to Nazem Kadri. Not quite as much talent, not quite as much character, but he's sort of in the same vein as Nazem Kadri. Plus, he makes $1 million less. On top of that, you get a great skating defenseman. I thought that was a great trade. Now, look at it now. Has Tyson Barrie scored a goal? Let me just check quickly, but I would completely doubt it if Tyson Barrie even scored a goal this year. Regardless, he's playing some of his worst hockey ever. Yeah, 0 goals in 23 games, 7 assists, 7 points. He's a -11. Now, Tyson Barrie, he's never been a defensive juggernaut out there. He's only gotten, he's been a plus player twice in his career. But his play with the Toronto Maple Leafs, he's just having a tough time adapting to their system. He really has. Okay, last few comments before I end this. My brother needs to cook. There's a dynamic. Or, Paul,
Yeah.
you can just cook now. Just don't, like, bang pots and shit.
I'm frying.
Okay, I don't think that's a problem.
Okay.
Warning, guys, my brother is frying shit, so you might hear in the back. Okay, what was I saying? Okay, questions. There's a dynamic. Oh, sorry. I guess Joe says, I guess Babcock saw pizza as another Commodore. Wouldn't be surprised if in the near future we see Spezza in an interview trashing Babcock. Yeah, and I believe there was another player that wasn't a fan of Commodore. I think it was Madano. Of Babcock, sorry. There was another player that wasn't a fan of Babcock. I think it was Madano. So we're seeing a kind of a trend here. A lot of players coming out saying, well, you know what? Mike Babcock, he's kind of a dick. He always makes that sour, puckery face as if he's sucking on a midget's wiener. We think he's a dick. And if a lot of people come out and say that, you could say they're lying, and they could be, or they could be exaggerating. But the fact that a lot of people are coming out and saying it, you're getting an accurate depiction as Mike Babcock there. Dom Smith says, I want to nut inside of Willie so bad. Right in his tight asshole. How would you know it's tight, first of all? P.S. Willie is hot. So hot right now. Well, listen, Dom. If you engaging into anal sex with William Nylander and ejaculating in his tight butthole, if that's the wake-up he needs to start playing decent hockey, then go get his address, tear your pants down, and insert your penis in his anal cavity and try to give him the kick in the short he needs. E. Smith says, with Babcock gone now, they have no excuse for their horrible play. If they continue to suck, Dubas will be next. Yes and no, E. Smith. Yes and no. Because I think that the games remaining, it's too short a sample size to just turn the whole ship around. I mean, if they suck this year, the remaining of this year, and if they suck the next year completely, then yeah, absolutely. That does show that Dubas is the problem. But I would give the new coach, Keefe, I would give him a little bit more time. There was a lot of rumors, guys. Mike Babcock and Dubas, they didn't always see eye to eye. Can someone correct me in the chat? Can someone correct me in the chat? I think that Babcock's hiring, not firing, his hiring was something that Shanahan did. It wasn't something that Dubas did. So this isn't necessarily the coach Dubas has in mind. For all we know, dumbass wanted Keefe from the start. Okay? He wanted Keefe from the start. Maybe Babcock wasn't the guy. And maybe Shanahan, being the president, he said, listen, let's ride out the storm. Let's keep Babcock. At the first sight of trouble, then yeah, you can go hire Keefe. But no, as of now, Babcock was not Dubas's guy. Joey Giroux says, I can just imagine that call. Dubas, hey Willie, so we ordered you a male prostitute. Yeah, pretty much. You know who he looks like? If you look back at the pictures of him with the cornrows, he looks like James DeFranco in Spring Breakers. Look at Spring Breakers. He looks exactly like James Franco. Dom Smith says, thanks, Daddy. I'm going to go jerk off to a picture of you right after this. Stream ends. Oh, dude. Good luck. Good luck. Hey, if you manage to jerk off to a picture of me, then you're a braver man than I thought of. Joe, Lou Lamoriello. I think he had a problem with Mike Babcock. Not too sure, though. Not too sure. Yeah, Lou Lamoriello, he's another guy that's very old-fashioned. Jake Link, my co-host, he's a fan of the Devils. He was a fan of them for a long time. I would hear stories from him, like he would fire a whole group of people, and then he would just sit in the lobby so he can see the people disappointed just walking away after being fired. Sorry, my voice cracked. After being fired. I mean, I've heard some horrible campfires about Lou Lamoriello, so yeah. Guys, if you have any remaining questions, I think I went on for 40 minutes. Not too shabby, not too shabby. But if you don't have any more remaining questions, I will tell you guys, make sure to like this video. Let me just preface it here. These are my raw emotions, my raw reactions. Maybe I need to go to bed, jerk off to a picture of Don Smith, and just marinate on this. So I can think about it, and maybe tomorrow I might have a different opinion. Maybe I'm gonna wake up and say, you know what? I think Babcock was okay. I think that it's really the GM's fault. Who knows? I need to marinate on this. Dom Smith, can I fuck you, please? Well, first of all, in society, Don Smith, you have to be polite. Look, I'm putting my foot down. You need to be polite in society. That is why I congratulate you for asking me please. You use your please and thank you. That's good. You can absolutely fuck me. RK says, why? I heard some rumblings, but can't believe they pulled the trigger. Yeah, they did it. They did it. And we're about to see if this Sheldon Keefe guy, if he's everything people say he is. Okay, Joe, he says, do you think Byron needing surgery was the reason why he was struggling this year? Yep, I do think that was the reason why he was struggling. I mean, his calling hard, it's his speed, and he wasn't moving fast. I don't think it's because the player didn't want to. I really thought it was because something was ailing him. Coach Kenyemi, on the other hand, I don't think anything's ailing him. I think it's between his ears. So on that note, Joe, for more, join me on Sunday night. We'll be talking Canadians. On that note, I really appreciate you guys coming here, whether it be E. Smith, whether it be Dom Smith, whether it be Joey Giroux, whether it be Joe. I really appreciate you guys coming out here and talking about the Mike Babcock firing. You guys had some excellent questions. Even you, Dom Smith. I mean, I think that William Nylander question was great. So thank you very much. If you guys want, please subscribe to my channel. Please like this video. Quickly, Dom Smith, I can't wait. I'll bring the strawberry lube and the handcuffs, please. Cuff me, daddy. It's more of an acquired taste, but I rather apricot lubes. But make sure to subscribe. And as per usual, my name is Matt. Keep your stick on the ice.